Hello world of YouTube, and welcome to the Tribe Called Quest discography review. A discography review that I've wanted to do for a while at this point. In fact, I planned on doing it later on in the year, just because it's been long enough. I should talk about Tribe's discography. But given they were announced recently to be included in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I figured this would be the perfect time to talk about the hip-hop group that I would argue was pivotal in helping sort of pivot the sound of hip-hop into where it would burgeon out from in the 90s. There were a lot of groups that were sort of coming up at around the same time that had a similar energy, but I think Tribe kind of sits above them all, if only for sheer chemistry and consistency in their golden era, while the group has had, like, some small rotations here and there, and throughout each release, the only core driving force is Q-Tip and Phife Dawg doing vocals, with Q-Tip and Ali Shaheed Muhammad doing production. But Consequence and Jarobi White occasionally pop in and out on a handful of releases throughout their 6-album catalog. And today, I'm going to be sitting down and talking about all 6 of those records and ranking them from least to most favorite, along with telling you, or at least giving you a good roadmap on how to get into a Tribe Called Quest if you've never listened to them before. Now, with that in mind, there isn't a lot that I would say negatively about a Tribe Called Quest. Even their worst record, I would say, is still a 7 out of 10. Because that chemistry between Tip and Phife at its peak is just pure, inspirational hip-hop. I think that if there's any rapper that I would say is at the foundation of the DNA for what shaped me as a rapper, Q-Tip is one of those guys. He just has this incredible writing style that I think bounces off of Phife's playfulness so very well. And I think that the production they decided to hop on and pull together just adds to the atmosphere tenfold. I think that as far as, like, getting into hip-hop, they're one of the foundational groups most should spin at some point in their lives, if just the classics or their whole discog. But either way, like I said, worst to best, giving you a rubric, starting with while their most successful release, and I think that Consequence, Q-Tip's cousin, does a lot to spice up that chemistry on his features on here, I think that this album's biggest hindrance is a feeling as a listener to some of the potential tension that may have happened throughout the pulling together of this project. There's a lack of cohesion in the chemistry between Tip and Phife specifically that I think sort of sets this record down. It's, like I said up at the top, still a solid record. It's still a 7 out of 10 experience, and as far as, like, showcasing their talents as a group, it still does so in some select instances, like the opener Phony Rappers, where it feels like Tip and Phife are sort of poking at battle rap culture from the perspective of being caught up in it, showcasing that wit tenfold on top of that. I also think that, again, tracks like Motivators, which have Consequence, feel a bit more like a jovial Tribe-ass cut, even if there's more serious subject matter explored on this album as a whole. And tracks like Once Again and The Jam, which sort of feel a bit more elevated songwriting-wise, at least stick the landing. And, you know, the fun sort of throwback stuff on a track like Once Again, where they're doing the Once Again tip all the time, Phife sort of trade-offs from Check the Rhyme, I think is a fun little moment on here. And I always love seeing Phife pop off, like on Baby Phife's Return. Even on a track like The Crew, it just didn't feel like Tip is selling the group quite as strongly as he had in records past. And there's other tracks like Separate Together that I don't think reach their message quite as strongly as it could have given the artists at play. It's also just kind of disappointing when looking at the behind the scenes, because there's other all-star producers on here like Jay Dilla, who does a handful of tracks, and the production between him, Tip, and Ali is just choice as hell. Some really select beats. I think that the frustrations are felt more so on this than even on the next release that they released, which is spoilers, just a step above this one in the ranking. I feel like this is a point of curiosity for those that have spun A Tribe Called Quest and just kind of want to get to another record in their catalog that may not be as highly regarded in hindsight as like Midnight Marauders or Low End Theory. I think the Beats, Rhyme, and Life is still worth it because there's some poignant things said, there's still some chemistry felt, and the production by and large is still a fucking choice. I just think that the hit ratio isn't quite as high as it is on other records higher than this in the ranking.
If you didn't know, put my mic inside your brains on this home bitch. It's the rhyme, it's the beat, the vibe.
Now, similarly to aspects of Beats, Rhyme, and Life, and very much so on aspects of Thank You for Your Service, the Love Movement feels like a sort of kaleidoscope look back on Tribe's career as it had been, while unifying everything under this message of love that I think elevates it above a record like Beats, Rhyme, and Life. On top of that, while Consequence isn't as prolific on here, the other collaborators, especially Busta Rhymes coming in on a few tracks, and artists like Mos Def, D-Life, Noir, and Redman coming up also just kind of help add to the camaraderie feel in a similar way that I feel like happens on Thank You for Your Service, but again, maybe not as quite as well executed as that record. I like the Love Movement. I don't think the production is as good as Beats, Rhyme, and Life, but that's sort of the trade-off. You know, the rapping is a little bit more cohesive on here, and I enjoy the way that Fife and Tip chop it up on here. It feels a bit more unified in some instances. But again, tracks like Steppin' It Up, Common Ground, Pad and Pen, and the closer, Rock Rock Y'all, all are some of the stronger moments on here, and it's because it's like a collaborative pot where every artist is sort of just pulling some good shit together. I love His Name Is Muddy Ranks, though, and I feel like that might be the best track out of either of these two records. It has Fife, again, just having some fun on a really well-produced beat, and I think that as far as, like, being the mission state for Fife Dog's style as a rapper, I think His Name Is Muddy Ranks is a really good showcasing of that in hindsight. I also think that the way that they sort of tie it into love in a relationship sort of way, like on Like It Like That and on Hot For You, is a good sort of planting and payoff moment on the record as a whole. I enjoy components of this more on paper, but it is still a bit of a step down comparatively to the rest of the discography. I think similarly to Beats, Rhyme, and Life, I feel like this is a point of curiosity. It's a point that if you're listening to Tribe, you should just get to anyway, because it's another really solid record by this group. I think that there's other moments that I think were hopeful, you know, upon paper, but when listening, aren't as interesting, like Busta's Lament. And as far as feeling like a Tribe album made in 1998, it has components of that in its production, like on tracks like Find a Way and on the instrumental Four Moms, but I don't think those tracks set back the record in ways that other records that sound a little dated do. It helps kind of round out the mood and sort of puts the listener in the atmosphere of 98 in a pretty solid way. It's just not quite as cohesively put together as the other records above this in the discography that I would say are better.
To my tribe that flows in layers. Right now, Fife is a point sayer.
Now, I could understand some people, especially maybe some old heads who just really like old Tribe, taking issue with me putting their debut, People's Instinctive Travels and Paths of Rhythm, at this point in the ranking. Totally understandable. I do think that it is a fantastic starting point for these guys, and as far as, like, bridging the eras from before, from like the native tongues into something that would evolve into what they follow this up with, I think that it does so also just as well. I think that as far as providing this proof of concept for what this band is going to do, as far as having these more upbeat style with some fun wordplay and a jovial sense surrounding some of the Afrocentric lyrics that they're spinning, does so fantastically. I mean, you've got, you know, tracks like the very not so serious I Left My Wallet in El Segundo, which is a classic story-driven song, or like storytelling song about the title in question, or even like Ham and Eggs, which is just like the most 1990-ass hip-hop song I could think of existing, where it's just the two guys talking about not liking ham and eggs. Or other classics like Bonita Applebum and Can I Kick It, which is just a fantastic two-hit combo in the middle point of the record. Other stuff like the tongue-in-cheek Pubic Enemy and Luck of Lucian, which sort of keep that jovial energy, but try to, you know, funnel the lyrics into some serious or relatively serious subject matters. You know, the Luck of Lucian takes the storytelling on a track like I Left My Wallet in El Segundo, but does some, like, genuinely cool shit, but actually talks about some, like, actual shit with it, which I think is awesome. It's got a lot of the benchmarks for a good debut, along with being just a really good product of its era. Again, it's just here because I think that, especially with the stuff I put above this, they built upon this foundation in a way that is exponentially more iconic, in my opinion. I love this record, though. I feel like if you are getting into Tribe, this is a great starting point, because, again, it's like a good encompassing of the mission statement of the style and mood that these guys cook with. I also think Jerobi is a really good addition or piece of this dynamic that, while I don't think I miss his presence on the stuff I like more than this, I do also appreciate some of the other points where he does crop up in some surprising ways later in their career. But I think that as far as like being mission statement, this does it. This is still really choice and still a great record in its own regard. It's the first, like, 8+ out of 10 in their discography, in my opinion.
Follow a beta, I DVR for later. Cop a monster with a G, I'm a waiter. You can't define us X, Y, Z.
2016 is a year that a lot of people look upon fondly with music, especially in hip-hop. And as somebody who was, at the time, already a really big Tribe Called Quest fan and was bummed about the passing of Phife Dawg, this record was a genuine late-in-the-year surprise that has held up more and has stayed in my rotation more than most of the other rap albums from that year, as far as being the same as People's Instinctive Travels, but like the other end of a bookend, to be this send-off to a legacy in every facet. I think this does so and ties everything beautifully and ties it all together in this just well put together bow. It's an album that I think ages better with every passing year. I think that, like, the surprise of Jerobi on the Space Program alone was just pure awesomeness, while also having Consequence crop up on a couple of songs and I think accent the mood better than he did on Beats, Rhymes, and Life, while also having songs that more directly speak on social issues that they have talked about in the past and, you know, had with some emotional brevity, like on Beats, Rhymes, and Life, just sort of done so more gracefully in the vein of a track like The Space Program or its follow-up, We the People, or even just talking about reflections on one's own place as a legacy act and how it's impacting those to come, like on tracks like Kids or, you know, on Ego to some degree. With also just a bevy of features that help round this out and sort of accent the legacy building aspect of it. I think it's just the perfect culmination of ideas in what I would say is one of the best, like, final records that a group could put together. I think that it is incredible. The beats on here, superb. A bevy of this has stayed in my rotation and, like, been rotated into various playlists. You know, I think that the Elton John sample into just a performance from him on the bridge of Solid Wall of Sound, awesome creative decision. The same sample flip on Mobius, like what occurred on Bonita Applebum, is, again, just further tying into the bookending aspect and theme of this record. Black Spasmodic is an iconic track, in my opinion, by them. Melatonin is one of the best Q-Tip solo tracks the group has ever done. The tribute to Phife Dawg in the closer, The Donald, is really sweet. There's just so much about this record that just sets it so high that, like, I almost put it in the number 2 spot. I really love Thank You For Your Service that much. And I think that, like, while it's not a good starting point, it's absolutely essential listening in the same caliber that their other, like, golden age material is, in my opinion. As far as, like, vets coming in, dropping another classic, then piecing out, this is the best version, one of the best versions of that, in my opinion.
Did not you know that my style's a top dollar? The 5-foot assassin, I can fleas off his collar. Hip-hop.
When it comes to, like, following up a record that saw you sort of adapting your sound to a shakeup and creating this stronger thematic through line that feels like a pairing with that, is some magical shit. And I think Midnight Marauders is that kind of project. While maybe not as jazzy as Low End Theory, I think that, like, creating this mellow, sample-driven experience with these interludes to sort of add to the themes, I think is a really cool creative decision. And I do think that, like, it pairs really well with the Low End Theory, if only because it creates this good sort of other side to the minimalism that record is sort of trying to build from, while also keeping true to some of the sort of unified themes and positivity seen on their first two records, like on Steve Bilko or on the iconic Award Tour, or how they even flip a track like The Chase into this record's vibe. I think is some masterful shit. You know, while this was dropped at a time when the paradigm shift in hip-hop was even deeper, I mean, this dropped same day as 36 Chambers, it does a good job at showcasing why the more laid-back style that they were trying to pull together still had some relevance and potency in the genre. You know, the flip of the super lax electric relaxation into the buoyant, or at least more, again, jovial clap your hands, is some really good sequencing, and how the energy gets ramped up a little bit more after that with the Busta Rhymes hook driven "Oh My God." Again, it just sort of creates this album-like experience that I think these guys, when they were creating classics, or at least stuff that just reached a benchmark, was some of the best parts about it, on top of the really cool production and just palpable chemistry between Fife and Q. I also think that, like, the serious storytelling still kind of feels like it's being built up, you know, like on 8 Million Stories, and the same with Midnight, both of which being these moments where the mood slightly shifts, but the energy stays the same, and, again, sort of helps act as the other side of the coin to a record like Low End Theory. I think that these are two cut from the same cloth. I think if you aren't starting with their debut, you should listen to the pairing of these two records together, but I think that, like, I prefer Low End Theory over Midnight Marauders because I like the jazzy stuff a bit more. I think that the beats are more interesting, but to kind of avoid going into Low End Theory, to cap off Midnight Marauders talk, I think this is another smooth classic by these guys, and again, as I've said, with Thank You For Your Service, even if you aren't starting with this, you need to get to this record, absolutely. It is an iconic record of its era, of all time. While I don't own Low End Theory, I do own Midnight Marauders because I do think it's still an essential record from these dudes, and I think that it is a really cool sort of expansion on some of the ideas from Low End in a way that feels more in line with people's instinctive travels, in a way that I also think is kind of neat.
On point tip.
All the time, Fife.
You're on point tip.
Yeah, all the time, Fife.
You're on point.
Sophomore slumps happen all the fucking time. It's a reason why it's sort of just this popular sort of ideology within music. And when your group not only underperforms in the way you want, but also loses a member in the process, when it comes to switching up your style, many artists have faltered at that prospect. But with Tribe and pulling together Low End Theory, they were cooking some genuine magic on here. Again, as far as, like, doubling down on your uplifting ideology and your Afrocentric lyrics, especially when it comes to sample choice and flipping around subject matter, while keeping it as mellow as you had, but also sort of making it a little more minimal on the instrumental front, is some cool creative decisions. And I think that all of that does to service that chemistry between Fife and Q that is throughout this record. I mean, Check the Rhyme is an iconic call and response track between the two of them, but like also singles like Buggin' Out or We've Got the Jazz have that buoyant, jovial camaraderie between the two of them in spades, while also still not losing sight of some of the more serious subject matter or skirting on that with some lines or some outright songs like on Show Business or Infamous Date Rape, which tackle their subject matter with that same kind of low-key energy, but I think does the smart job of at least like playing it a little more straight in a way that I think is also pretty fucking choice. Or on the aforementioned Everything is Fair, where they talk about how everything is fair when you're living in the city. It's done in a way that leans into their upbeat energy, but in a way that sort of spits in the face of opposition while addressing it. It's just really good stuff. On top of that, it closes with one of the best posse cuts, and my personal favorite posse cut of all time, Scenario, a song that also kind of feels like it's, again, bridging from the early inspirations that this group sprouted from in a way that I think is really fucking meaningful, while also introducing the world to the chemistry duo that is Busta Rhymes and Q-Tip. I love this record. I think that it is as iconic of a hip-hop record as it can be. One of my favorite hip-hop albums of all time. The production, again, iconic. The chemistry, incredible. The subject matter, diverse and well-expressed. Bangers on deck as well. It's got it. Low End Theory may not be, in my opinion, the starting point for Tribe Called Quest, but I think it is a starting point while also being my personal favorite record in their discography. And that's my ranking of the discography. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you like this discography review, give it a like. If you want to see more, consider subscribing. I drop 2 to 4 vids a week depending on what I've got going on, and I've got a Rachel's Game Corner dropping tomorrow that I hope you all enjoy. Either way, thank you so very much for watching. I've been Valor Rack. You guys are good at assassin situations, and I'll see you another day.